Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Mikhail Peters. I decided to take a break from recording some videos in Russian because now I don't have to think so much about my grammar because I'm a native English speaker. But today I decided to make a video about something I'd like to make a video about, which is how to travel on the cheap, since this was the whole premise of the original idea that I had for the Migratory Michaela accounts. And I'm going to tell you about how I find cheap flights. I'm also going to tell you about how I usually pack and how all of this saves me a ton of money. I will not hide the fact that traveling is a very expensive lifestyle. However, I do believe that if you are a US citizen, and assuming this may be controversial, you are not below the poverty line, that it probably is within your reach to travel. Especially one of the things that most people don't realize is that when you travel outside the US, it is very possible. Even if you are to go to Europe versus just going to different states. Why? Because there are these things called hostels that don't really exist in the US. And I would also say that hotel rooms in Europe just tend to be cheaper than hotel rooms in the US. I feel like in the US you can stay in places like motels that are not nice and they're very expensive still. It's kind of amazing how that works. So I'm going to talk about my packing strategies, and I'm also going to tell you about how I find flights. So with packing strategies, and one of the ways I save a lot of money, I almost never pay for luggage. I want to challenge you to, next time you go on a trip, I want you to take note of how many of the items in your suitcase you actually wore versus how many of them were just there and didn't get worn at all. Because I still do this in the US and end up with clothes I didn't wear. However, there is no room for this when I'm traveling internationally. A lot of times I'll fly something like Ryanair, which is kind of like the meme airline of Europe, and it's very similar to like Spirit Airlines or Frontier Airlines in the US. And you travel with like a very small backpack, not even like a backpacking backpack, which I'm going to talk about how much I love my backpacking backpack in this video, but yeah, like a small backpack. One of the other hacks is if you go with other people and let's say you split out an Airbnb, a lot of times Airbnb has a method to do laundry. So I do plan a lot of my trips around being able to do laundry, or if I'm going and visiting somebody I know, then they usually have laundry I can use. That's another really good strategy. If you're good at making international friends, you can go and visit them and stay with them, and vice versa. They can come stay with you. I was thinking about doing another video where I talk about how to make friends easily, because I'm pretty good at this, and people tell me I'm pretty good at this, but I didn't realize how hard it is for other people, so maybe I can talk about what I do. Today I did casually Google search, which I call it my existential Google of the day. What makes people not like you? And there are a lot of reasons, and so the opposite would be what makes people like you, and yeah, not being negative, so trying to be positive, showing genuine interest in people. But yeah, I could get more into this in another video. About how I think making friends is easy, but being genuine apparently is one of the easiest ways to make friends, which I think is my approach. And I hope that comes through on these videos, and if it doesn't, then I don't know, I need to stop being so reserved. Okay, anyway, back to the video. Yeah, I guess the dangerous thing about me speaking in English is I have more of a tendency to go on side tangents because it's more stream of consciousness and I'm focusing less on what I'm saying than I would in Russian. By the way, if you do want to watch my videos in Russian, I'm pretty sure you can auto-transcribe them into English if you're curious about what they say. But it's mostly me trying to deliver to Russian speakers more of an impression of what the US is like. But yeah, for my English-speaking audience, especially for the Americans, I do believe that you probably have more access to the rest of the world than you've initially been led on to believe. The U.S. is, you know, GDP-wise, the most powerful country in the world, and if you use your economic resources correctly, and if you do not have very high standards when you travel and feel like you need to be bougie with everything and stay in a 5-star hotel and eat a 5-course meal, then yes, it is like very possible for you to travel cheaply. So yeah, if you're at a hostel, a lot of times there's a kitchen, you don't have to go out to eat, although eating in other countries is cheaper because it just is, and then, you know, this tipping thing is not a thing, and I say that as somebody who works in a restaurant in the US. Yeah, like I remember being in the northern part of Italy, which is considered the nicer part of Italy because it's closer to Switzerland, so it's more expensive there, and getting pasta carbonara for 14 euros or 12 euros or something, and that was very recently. That was in 2022. Okay, pretty recently. Okay. So yeah, if you fly with an airline, making sure you're packing as minimally as possible. I usually will bring 1 or 2 pairs of jeans, and if it would be interesting to you, I can also like do more of a visual representation of this in another video, and then maybe a few tops, like 3 or 4 tops, and then wearing the same type of and I'm also thinking from more of a winter perspective when I usually do most of my traveling. That's another hack, is don't travel in the summer. I know that's really hard for people with kids, but if you're a single young person like me, and assuming you're working in the summer, which is what I've done a lot of summers, I don't usually have summers where I'm off. I would usually use the break between my couple of semesters to travel. People don't like to travel in January. So traveling off season. And now that I work remotely and I'm not following a school schedule, it's become even easier for me to travel whenever I want. And that's one of the other things. Just go on Google Maps, or sorry, not Google Maps. Yes, that also helps for your trip planning. Go on Google Flights, and it will show you when the cheaper times to travel are. And I always go and look there, and then sometimes I do book on the sketchy third-party websites. I've never had an issue with them. I have read reviews that people have had them, and if it's the same price as booking with the airline itself, I would book directly. But there have been a lot of times where, yeah, I just will book the other one because it saves me. I don't even care how much money it saves me. But I'm also not a very risk-averse person anymore, especially not as much as I was when I was young. So I'm like, okay, worst case, I get stuck at the airport and I have to buy a new flight. That's the worst case. But it hasn't happened to me yet, so I'm going to continue doing it until that does happen, which I'm sure it will at some point. But that's fine. So finding cheap flights that way. Also, if you're already in Europe, traveling around Europe is incredibly cheap. Why? Because of population density. It's not like the US where things are very spread out. If you really think about how many places in the US are kind of the middle of nowhere in the middle of the US and how you have to go from coast to coast, and no offense to people who live there, but there aren't really like a lot of big places in the middle of the US that people are trying to go to. It's just the way it is. Although I did read a New York Times article that was talking about how those will become the safest places to live in the US as climate change keeps happening. We'll see if that's true. I don't know when that will happen, but it's an interesting thought. So anyway, even if I was flying to the middle of the US, it's still going to cost me like $200 or $300. That's not the case when you're flying Ryanair. You can get Ryanair flights for, laughably during COVID, €8 one way from where I lived in Lappeenranta in Finland to Milan or Hungary, Budapest. Crazy. So find cheap flights and learn how to pack better. So what are some ways aside from packing minimal clothes, and then layering was the other thing I was going to say before. Like you wear, like I would usually do like a flannel and then like a jean jacket and then a regular jacket, depending what season it is and how cold it was. One pair of shoes. Sorry, wear the same pair of shoes the whole week and make sure they're comfortable. I usually wear my Doc Martens. They are my European standard for whatever reason. Honestly, that's because they were my manifestation item for getting the scholarship to go study in Finland. I do this with all of my goals. Okay, I don't know. I don't have one right now, but when I wanted to work for NASA, it was an outer space lunchbox. And then, and then I did work there, so it worked. And then the Doc Martens also worked somehow. That was the Finland one. Doc Martens aren't even Finnish, so I don't know how I decided that, but I guess I just associated it with Europe. So other tricks, and these are ones that I'm not going to claim myself having credit for because I've read about them. One of them is to don your pockets. So I just explained if you have a coat and then a flannel and blah, blah, blah. Things like chargers and toiletries do take up a lot of room in your small backpack that you're going to travel with if you're on Ryanair. So you can stick items in your pockets, and that works pretty well. Another thing, I've just learned this one and I haven't done it yet. Last time, where was I? I think I was in Serbia or something, or maybe I was in Lithuania. I don't remember, one of those countries over there. And I bought this pillow. It's one of those neck pillows. I never use these. I don't know. I don't really, I sleep and fly at the same time a lot, and I still never use these, and I don't really get that many neck problems, so I don't know what's wrong with me. Guess I'm just lucky there. But anyway, my point with this is, this has a zipper, and this has an inside foam pillow thing. You can take that out and you can fill that with clothes and pretend it's a pillow, which is probably what I would do since I don't actually use these. I haven't done this yet, but I know it will work, and I did read about this online. So again, not actually, no, I didn't read about that online. Somebody told me, but thank you to that person because it's great advice. Now, that's what I'm doing more so for like my Ryanair flights, which are around Europe and are like a couple hours. And I stay in hostels or I stay in Airbnbs with friends, and that's usually my primary method of what I'm going to be doing when I'm trying to get cheap flights in Europe. So now I guess we're talking more about when I'm flying internationally with no luggage, as I'm about to do in a couple days, actually going to Finland. So usually there's a limit of like 8 kilograms or 10 kilograms. Another hack, if you will, then your personal item is like a laptop bag, put all your heavy stuff, which would be your laptop, in there, or whatever else is heavy. Sometimes your toiletries, sometimes your charger, sometimes a pair of shoes. I do travel with running shoes internationally a lot because that's the other thing that I do, even though I try not to travel with like real shoes a lot, because even though I do like to do fashion stuff sometimes, um, yeah, it's not worth it when I'm trying to save money. So all right. So I'm going to introduce to you my backpack that I have packed for Finland, which is my Osprey backpack. I think this is the 40-liter one. And yeah, this thing looks huge and it looks like a turtle when I wear it. Like, it's just really big. And people do stop to weigh me a lot because it looks so big. But that backpack was actually designed. I did a lot of research on it before I purchased it, which I purchased it a long time ago. 2019. Yeah, it was $120 or $40 back then, and probably one of the best $140 I ever spent. But it's designed to exactly fit in the baggage sizer. And unlike an actual luggage suitcase, like one of the small ones that you would bring, like the carry-on suitcase, it doesn't have like the wheels and the handles and all that stuff that, is making it heavier. Yeah, it might hurt your back sometimes, so that is one disclaimer I have. And like size wise right now, I think that's about 20 pounds or like 10 kilos or something like that. So trying to think of any other hacks that I have right now. But a lot of it too, if I'm being very honest, is I don't spend a lot of time doing very enjoyable things in the US. So my approach to being in the US is I think the US is the best place in the world to earn money. That is the one thing it's good for. I think there's a lot of a hustle and grind culture here that I am susceptible to. So I do spend a lot of my life in the US like that, and I kind of enjoy my life in other countries where I think things are cheaper and my dollar goes further. So while I'm here, I may forego things like going to the movies. I do love going out to eat, and I do that occasionally now, especially that I'm working full time. But when I was a student, and my primary method of earning money for doing all this travel stuff has been working at a restaurant. I've been working at a restaurant since I was 16, and I'm now 28, so that says a lot. But I've been serving at a restaurant for 10 years. Yeah, and it's a very stressful job sometimes, but it is a great way to get the money that I need to travel. And I think that the experiences that you get from traveling are some of the richest ones that you can imagine, because your memories, and especially when you store them in ways where they're novel experiences, that is actually scientifically proven to increase your happiness, but also to slow down your perception of time. So, those are other psychological reasons for which I would advocate traveling. Also, I don't think you should be afraid to solo travel, even if you're a girl. You just have to be more selective about what countries you travel to. Sadly, I would probably not travel to South America by myself. I did have one day of experience when I was in South America by myself. I was in uh, somewhere near Cali, Colombia, and I was out in broad daylight at like noon, and I kept getting catcalled at. So I went home at like 6 p.m. because I got scared. Then I went straight to the airport. I'm sure probably it would have been fine, but it just made me uncomfortable. So I don't like to be in places where I get a lot of attention from men while I'm alone. That makes me feel unsafe. Europe, I don't have that issue with. I've traveled mostly, well, I have traveled with other people in Europe, but like independent traveling has been in Europe. Because I'm a Russian speaker, I'm very comfortable in Central Asia where I learned Russian, and then like any post-Soviet country, I feel very, very safe walking around by myself alone there. Like, really, I have actually like an extreme amount of trust for the people who live in those countries, because I do believe they genuinely really want to help you. So, you know, I could also talk about traveling there. I have thought about trying to do like setting up tours for people to go travel around Kyrgyzstan or Armenia or something like off the beaten path. I don't know if people would be interested in that. If so, you can let me know. But I love traveling those places. I have been to South Africa. I like South Africa. I felt comfortable there. I supposedly there can be a lot of crime in Johannesburg. I did not see any of that. I did not experience any of that. I was just told about it. But I was also not by myself on that trip. But with solo traveling, which I've mostly done in Europe, I do think that it gives you a very rich experience, because when I'm not with somebody else who I need to pay attention to their needs, wants, and desires, I can go do everything on my agenda that I want by myself. And I usually make friends along the way. A lot of times I'll make friends with somebody at the hostel. Maybe I'll tell them what I'm doing for the day, and then they want to come with me, and I'm like, that's fine. And I get to know a new person. And I love meeting people, and this is really something that traveling allows you to do, is you get to meet so many people, be exposed to so many diverse backgrounds and points of view, and it's super interesting, and again, giving you that variety to really make your life enjoyable, I think. um I'm not sure that I can think of anything else I want to include about traveling on the cheap, or how to pack better, but I could follow up on this. And if you have any questions, or if you find this interesting or helpful, I really want to like motivate more people to travel, because I think it is such an enriching life experience. And I know a lot of people look at people like me and they think, oh, I could never do that. Like, no, you can do that. You can do anything you want. So don't let anybody tell you can never do something that you want to do in life, because those people are wrong. You are the only one who controls what you do in life. As my brother says to me, change starts today. So if there's something in your life you want to change, if you want to become a traveler, if you want to become a solo traveler, if you want to travel on the cheap, if you want to make your dreams come true in that way, I believe that you can. And I'm happy to dispense any more advice that people need to feel more empowered to do that. And if you want that information, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably go back to recording more of my videos in Russian, because, yeah, that's been picking up a lot of traction. So we'll see how this English one goes. All right, well, thank you for your attention, and have a nice day, everybody. I hope you can reach your travel goals. All right, until next time, bye.